Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Crime on the Record. My name is Jason, and as always, I'm here with my wife, Candace. You want to tell them a little bit about the show?
First of all, I would like to say that I noticed that you just said wife and not wife and co-host. I feel like that is because of the people on YouTube not referring to me as the other host. I'm very offended by this.
You,
Okay,
you should let it go. All right.
yeah,
Listen, we all know you're the reason why people listen. All right, so just be happy with that title and not, the host.
yeah, okay. Anyway, if you've listened before, welcome back. For new listeners, a little about the podcast. Each week, I tell him about a different case. We focus on cold cases about people who've gone missing, while others may be unsolved murders, and from time to time, we may cover current cases. Although current cases we typically are covering on the YouTube channel.
Like right now, we are following quite a bit. Debbie Collier, Quentin Simon, the Stockton serial killer. So there's a lot going on at the YouTube channel. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes. You can also find us on Twitter at Crime on Record. And if you have any comments or case suggestions, you can email us at cotrpodcast@gmail.com. So with all that out of the way, what are we talking about tonight, babe?
Okay, so last time we did Ellen Greenberg, and we were not finished with that, so we are going to pick up with the rest of that tonight. So, first of all, just some extra information from because when we left off last time, we were talking about how there was some controversy, I guess, as to whether or not her death was suicide or homicide. So, first thing I wanted to point out is some things that were said from people that she knew. So, the Saturday before, she and her best friend, Allison Stern, went dress shopping for the friend's upcoming wedding, in which Ellen would be a bridesmaid. Allison said she was not herself that day. When she picked her up, she looked disheveled, which was odd to Allison, as she usually was very put together. She said, quote, when we were in the fitting room, she even started crying a little and just like, I'm so sorry. I know I'm not myself, but I'll get it together. But Allison said she began noticing Ellen's behavior changing around the end of 2010. She talked about being stressed about work and wanting to quit her job. It has been stated Ellen's father had told her she could move home if she saw a psychiatrist for help with her personality shift. And, I get that a lot of this stuff is talking about her job and work, but what does that have to do with moving home? You
Yeah,
know?
and why? And then why does she have to see a psychiatrist for her to
I
come home?
mean,
I mean, I could see therapy, but I mean, well, maybe I'm overthinking that because
yeah,
I'm married to a therapist, so yeah, I'm
I
probably
think so because
overthinking
most people use them interchangeably.
that. Yeah,
With all of, the different stuff going on, it's no wonder her family would continue to want others to review the case. So, on October 18th, 2016, Dr. Wayne K. Ross, who specializes in forensics and neuropathology, looked at Ellen's case. Dr. Ross even had a crime scene reconstructionist to review the case and perform a crime scene reconstruction of it, which those are so interesting to me. The way you can tell so much just by reconstructing the crime scene.
yeah,
And I think, too, that for me, that kind of tells me a lot more than just what the police would be saying because the police didn't even really seem to care about the crime scene. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't even they
yeah.
were just like, "It's fine, it's whatever, it's a suicide for sure." On January 29th, 2018, Dr. Henry Lee issued an opinion after reviewing the case. Dr. Lee is one of the world's foremost forensic scientists who worked on cases such as Lacey Peterson, DC snipers, and even the post 9/11 forensic investigation, which I think out of all of those, working the post 11 forensic investigation is pretty freaking impressive to me.
When you think about it, it's kind of horrific to think about, but I could see why he's the foremost forensic scientist.
Yeah, I mean, Even saw him. We've seen him on some of the crime con stuff and different things like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love his personality. That's
Yeah,
the guy, right? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, he's funny.
he is. On May 1st, 2019, Thomas P. Brennan, who is an investigator, private investigator for the family, types up a death analysis and sends it to Joe Pedroza. Now, Joe Pedroza is the family's attorney. So he gets all this information from Dr. Wecht, Dr. Lee, Dr. Ross. So he gets all this information, puts it all together, and creates a death analysis. And he sends that to the attorney. He's like, hey, you hired me to figure out what's going on. This is what we got. So then the attorney sends the following letter to Dr. Sam Galino, which is the chief medical examiner. So you remember the guy that kept writing all the whatever you call them? Because I didn't see them as reprimands.
The coaching documents to the
Yeah.
oh so competent medical examiner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really want to miss anything. So I may end up reading a good deal of this. It's all important information. It starts with, obviously, Dear Dr. Galino, I write in regards to the 2011 death of Ellen Greenberg and your office's findings to alert you to a number of questions that cast serious doubt in the minds of various medical and neuropathological experts as to the conclusion of your office as to Ellen's cause of death, as being a suicide. In our view, these questions warrant a closer examination of the case and further investigation of the circumstances surrounding her untimely death. And then it's broken down into different subjects, I guess. I don't know the best way to put it. So like the first one is experts unanimously conclude Ellen's death was not a suicide. And then like the next one, other material considerations warranting reconsideration. So in the first one, he tells him that he'd enclosed copies of reports by several eminent qualified experts in the fields of forensics and neuropathology, and that they have unanimously concluded that Ellen's death could not have been the result of a suicide. It says Dr. Wayne K. Ross, a well credentialed, board certified pathologist who specializes in forensic pathology and neuropathology, conducted his own independent investigation, including a re examination of Ellen's spinal cord specimen retained by the ME's office, and concluded beyond a doubt, among other things, that it simply is not possible that all of the wounds suffered by Ellen were self inflicted.
Okay. So you've got all these doctors that are well known, world renowned, saying it's not a suicide. And then you've got this one guy who can't get through a single autopsy without making a mistake, saying it was a suicide. Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I remember you saying those were like free of any DNA from that from this incident. They were just in the sink. All right. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and even if both knives were there, you don't stab yourself with different knives, right? I mean, not to mention 20 times, but I mean, let's let's just say once. You don't stab yourself with two knives once. So, and I would imagine it's pretty easy to tell if the knife was smooth or serrated based on the wound. I mean, that seems pretty rudimentary when you're talking about looking at a wound during an autopsy. Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna say it was one knife, wouldn't you go with serrated, considering that's the one that was left there? Gosh. Hmm. Yeah, and I know we have a different level of true crime knowledge. That's we've made that very clear. But in my, so how I'm thinking about this, right? So if you have a referee in the NFL, that means this referee has been a ref at the college level and at the high school level because they have to get a certain number of points as they're going through to make sure that they're ready for the next level before they can get to the NFL because there's a lot of money out there riding on our games and everything else. So an ME is one of those jobs that I would think that you would have to make sure that you're able to do and prove that you're able to do because an NFL referee can be busted down to college or completely kicked out if they make too many calls that were wrong. So, how a medical examiner can continue to keep his job and screw up this bad. Like this isn't like he missed he forgot to sign a form every now and then. No, no, come on. He said a wound was smooth and the knife was serrated. Like that. That's not excusable at all. That's a fireable offense, in my opinion. Mm, yeah, yeah. And in this case, if we're talking about two different knives, the potential to have two assailants is pretty high, I would think. Um, Maybe not, but there's a potential. So he's allowing two murderers possibly to run around because he is incompetent. No, no, yeah, yeah, no, no, no. I agree. Yeah, yeah. Hmm. 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 Yeah, because I mean, once once all that adrenaline, he comes down off of all that adrenaline, whoever he may be. Um, because I mean, I agree, it's definitely a he. But once they come down off all that adrenaline, the next thing is okay, how do I get away with this? Because even if it wasn't premeditated, there's still a how do I get away with this? So you got to focus on that next. So I could see taking the broken one and leaving that one in there because you know that's because that's what a random killer would do, or whatever the person's thinking. Wait. Mm. Yeah, 20 times. 20 times. Yeah, and I mean even Dr. Incompetent didn't say it was a suicide at first. So I mean even though he's a moron, knew it wasn't a suicide until, oh, well, that latch thingy there. Okay, yeah, suicide. So I mean even he didn't think it was. I mean, because who would 20, 20 stab wounds and some in the back and in the skull and okay, yeah, nobody's gonna believe it. Mm. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, in looking at this analysis, and forgive me, I mean, I don't want people to think that, like, oh my gosh, she didn't do her homework. And so she, I'm not pausing because I didn't research. I'm pausing because I did so much research. I have so many reports. I'm flipping back and forth trying to make sure that I give everybody all the information because I don't want you to sit here and read. Nobody wants to hear me read reports for. you know, 2 hours. So,
Yeah. I feel like that was a slight humble brag, but all right.
no, I really didn't mean it that way, I
I know,
promise.
I know. I'm just messing with you.
Uh, but even like looking at this analysis, they wrote unknown whether or not any crime scene photos or forensics were performed by police. So they don't even know if they took photos. I mean, at that point, they had no idea. And we don't know, like, how many photos, what were the photos of? I mean, I've seen pictures of the knife, pictures of the berries and the cabinets, but did they take pictures from different angles? Like, did they take pictures all around her body of exactly how her body was sitting? I mean,
Yeah, and if you can't even say if you took those pictures or if you did this or if you did that, then clearly your investigation was terrible. I mean, I don't know
yeah.
another word for it. But
And
I guess if you think it's a suicide, why bother? And this is why you bother.
yeah,
Even if you think
exactly.
it's a suicide, this is why you still investigate it as it is at least a suspicious death. Even
Yeah.
if it looks clear cut, shot themselves in the head, I think it needs to be treated. I don't think anything should be treated as a suicide as soon as you look at it.
No,
There's just too many times.
every case should be treated as a homicide until proven otherwise, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
you can't you can't get those things back. You can have extra stuff you end up not needing, but you can't get that stuff back.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, and I think that's the reason why it's so important to treat it like it's a suspicious death. Because I mean, you think about all of those, you know, watch all those stories, those true crime stories where the detectives, for whatever reason, even before they knew DNA was a thing, they still held on to certain things. Whether it was they collected something under somebody's fingernails, or it was saliva, or whatever, they still held on to it just in case one day it might be useful. And so if they can do that, not even knowing what technology is coming, and these guys didn't even do any kind of
Yes.
investigation.
It is always amazing to me that they had the foresight to do that. I mean, amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
how did you know to save stuff that you had no idea they were going to come out with technology to test?
well, and I mean, when you think about the technology that they had back then versus what we have now, like it it wouldn't be shocking because I mean they are already working on it, but it wouldn't be shocking to see in the near future if we had flying cars. I don't want that because I mean people can't drive normal cars as it is, but we can still see that as maybe as that coming along. But you're talking about the middle 1970s. Like you don't even know that one day you're going to be carrying a computer in your hand that you can also use as a phone.
Exactly.
So to think that one day, oh hey, these skin cells might be worth something one day. Let me go ahead and hold on to them. So they had the foresight to do that. But these guys go in there and see somebody stabbed 20 times, like, oh yeah, everybody can come in the crime scene because it's not a crime scene. This is a suicide. Everybody, come on in, come on in.
Well, Well, and this death analysis also says, according to witnesses, the property manager and security man, police looked around the apartment without any medical information, determined the death to be a suicide, and abandoned the crime scene. The property manager and the security person ended up having to stay with the victim for several hours until medical examiner personnel could even remove her body.
And
So,
what was also kind of worrisome is if they were to, if it was ruled a homicide, like the chain of custody for all of this stuff, was that followed? I mean, like if there is a bunch of evidence, would they be able to even enter it as an exhibit, or would it just be thrown out if they were to actually say this was a homicide and try somebody for murder?
it is
What evidence would they be able
terrifying.
to use?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I mean, it says police, since the police had abandoned the scene, they were now forced to prepare affidavits of probable cause to obtain a search warrant to re enter the apartment. So, I mean, having to do these affidavits and wait to get a search warrant to re enter, how do you know who all's been in there since then and what they've
Yeah.
done?
Yeah, and I mean, let's just say if she was murdered and she happened to be murdered by somebody who has a lot of money, I mean, the money that they would be able to get, the type of defense attorney that they would be able to get with their money, they would just, so much stuff would not be admissible.
Yeah. Just the fact to me that there were so many bruises in various stages of healing on her body would have been enough of a reason for me to be like, hold up, she lives with a romantic partner. She's got all these bruises. They're in different places of healing. If this were a child, we would be looking at the parent for abuse. So why in the hell are you not looking at the partner?
Yeah. And I mean, and not even saying that's definitely what happened, but you
Yeah,
still
no.
need, like, you still need to look at it and consider it. I mean,
Exactly.
this is, I mean, I don't know. It, I don't try and, make fun of law enforcement or talk bad about them because their job is extremely difficult. I mean, there's
Hmm.
a lot of times that I'm like, how do they even solve murders sometimes? Because it's like they
Yeah.
don't have any evidence whatsoever, and then somehow they get a little bit of a break and they're able to figure it out. So there's a lot of police officers that are amazing, a lot of detectives that are amazing. Nobody involved in this one fits that for me.
No.
I mean, not at
Oh,
all.
well, but you know what? It does kind of make you wonder if certain people did their job and other people were like, you can do your job all day long, but if your boss shoots down the report you put out, what do you do?
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, so there may have been some people that were worth it, but those who made the final determinations and put together what mattered for this case, they're terrible.
Yeah, and I don't
So,
know that
yeah.
that happened. I mean, I don't know that, but I'm just saying, who knows? I mean, obviously somebody did a shitty job. We just
Hmm.
are not 100% sure who all that was. I mean, we know Dr. Osborne did not do a job worth a damn
Yeah.
because I mean, he's got a long line of proof that he is not up to the task of being a medical examiner.
Yeah. I mean, and some rookie could have been, saying something. They'd been like, "Shut up, rookie."
Right.
So who knows? Who knows what actually happened, other than they didn't properly investigate the scene.
It says also prior to the police returning to the apartment, the prominent attorney uncle of the fiance entered the apartment and removed the victim's work laptop, personal laptop, cell phone, engagement ring, and credit cards. The police did not retrieve the items from the attorney uncle until the 29th, and the victim's family had an opportunity to return the items to the family on the 28th when they attended her funeral. So they couldn't even say, oh, we took this stuff for safekeeping, so nobody went in and got it, and we were going to give it to the family. When? Because you saw them at the funeral, you didn't give them the stuff back.
Yeah, and if my fiance had just committed suicide, I don't know how important it would be for me to take the laptop and everything. I mean,
Yeah.
did they examine it after it was returned?
They did, and this it does sound very concerning at first because they did notate some searches. So I will give you those. On 12/18/2010, somebody searched suffocation suicide methods. On January 3rd of 2011, sex fantasy death, model death. I mean, I don't know why anybody would search that themselves, but okay. 1/6, so January 6th, Zoloft, Prozac side effects, benefits. 1/9, sertraline, girl electrocuted to death trying to Twitter in the bath. Again, don't know why you'd be searching that.
And
Um,
and and this is all being searched on her laptop?
yes.
Okay. All right.
And January 10th, quick suicide, euthanasia, a dangerous weapon, painless suicide. Now, you know what really stood out to me? So, one, sex fantasy death. I don't know why anybody would be looking at that for themselves. What are they? They're like, oh, I have this big sex fantasy and I want to die while doing it. What? What? That?
Yeah.
And then the electrocuted. in the bathtub trying to Twitter. Trying to
Yeah,
Twitter. I thought that was funny though.
yeah. Trying to use the tweeter. Yeah. So you go from sex fantasy to electrocution to now all of a sudden, well, I want a painless suicide. How do I find that out? The only search that honestly doesn't sound suspect to me is the one about Zoloft.
Yeah.
Because I could see, especially if her dad was saying, see a psychiatrist, and how she was feeling about her job and all of that. I could see that as being a search that somebody would do. What are the side effects? What are the benefits? That sounds like somebody's doing research on a medication that they're potentially, going to take. The other stuff sounds to me like somebody else was searching stuff on her computer. That way it looked like she was looking this stuff up. But
Yeah.
that's just me. That's just me.
Because also, why would you look for painless death? That's the last thing that was searched and then stab yourself 20 times? You can't tell me that's the painless option that they gave you.
Right. So everything that was searched it wasn't even close to what happened. Like there was no sex fantasy involved. There was no electrocution. There was clearly no painless.
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah. I mean, it to me, just looking at it, if somebody gave me a computer and said this person looked this stuff up, I'd be like, maybe 3 out of those 4 things somebody else looked up, but one I can see her looking up, not the others at all.
Exactly. And I believe, let's see. Well, I'll just tell you now because I don't know if it's in the, like I said, there are so many documents that, I mean, it'd be virtually, I mean, it's not impossible, but again, I don't think anybody wants to sit here and listen to me just read documents forever. But I don't know if it's in either one of these documents. So I'll just tell you. They did say that, and by they, I mean her private investigator and lawyer and everybody, it is their stance that most of these searches came from um I don't know how, like, maybe I'm so technologically behind. I mean, it's pathetic. But basically, like, it looked like it all started with her searching because she had questions of side effects and stuff on the medication that she was given. And these other things were other things that popped up when that was searched, like maybe some of the other options that came up in Google that showed as searches,
Okay.
but not that necessarily anyone typed in. Like, like, um, nobody, like, I guess what they're saying is maybe like they didn't type in, girl electrocuted to death trying to Twitter. They typed in sertraline, and then that was one of the things that come up. Like maybe a girl was, had started sertraline and was tired and was trying to Twitter in the bath and fell asleep and electrocuted. I don't know exactly, but um, regardless, the main point is they have an explanation for it. They feel like so. My explanation is I'm with you. I think somebody was probably looking that stuff up trying to make it look like she was, or was thinking, may not even thought, for sure that it would look like she looked it up, but was thinking, you know what? Let me do this on her computer. That way, if they do look, it'll show that she was the one looking this stuff up.
Yeah, because I mean, in like honestly, and not joking at all, but if something mysterious, if you were to die mysteriously, I would be very concerned about what police would think when they looked at your search history.
Oh
And
my
it's not
gosh.
be yeah, and it's not because you're some you're some freak or whatever, but there's so much stuff that you look up for your job. Like it would be
Yes.
like they would like I mean, I would already be suspect number 1 obviously. But
Yeah.
once they looked at your computer, they'd be like, "What has this dude been looking up on her computer?"
Between the true crime podcast and the true crime YouTube channel that we have, along with the fact that I am a kink positive therapist and I don't always understand some of the kinks. Like if it's the first time, people are coming up with new stuff they're into every day or new, we'll just say tools they use for these things.
Yeah.
And so sometimes things are said and I don't want, if the person's on a really good, they're opening up and they're talking. I don't want to interrupt them to be like, hold please, can you tell me what that is? I just make a note and I Google it later. And some stuff that
Mm-hmm.
pops up on this screen is disturbing at times. But, you know, I'm just saying, like, yeah, my search history is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what they would think that I was doing,
Yeah,
was looking that stuff up. So
exactly.
yeah. Hmm.
This thing, okay, so this is really crazy. A fraudulent statement regarding the findings of an examination of the wound to the spinal cord was placed in the ME's autopsy report at a later date in order to justify the findings of suicide. So I know that was really wordy. So basically, they're saying that so that when people started getting a little upset about the suicide thing and saying, oh, there's no way, after that stab wound to the spinal cord, it would have rendered her incapable of being able to use, to function to stab herself anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, someone falsified a statement from some kind of expert saying that they examined the spinal cord and absolutely it was fine, that she could have.
Mm-hmm.
It says the neurological forensic pathologist who was quoted in the report does not recall the case, does not recall being asked to examine the spinal cord specimen, and stated if she did examine the specimen, she would have submitted her findings on an invoice with charges for her work, which she does not have. To date, this alleged report has not been found. Um, Invoices with documented findings of the doctor's work do exist prior to January 27th and after January 27th. So they can't even say, oh, well, we had a file with her invoices or she had a file with her invoices and they just got lost. Nope, because you got all of them before that and all of them after. But you somehow don't happen to have that one invoice where you charged her or she charged you to do that.
Convenient.
Right. It is just disgusting. Like, who makes up a report?
Uh,
It's the audacity because you know, you've got to be thinking that you're so smart that nobody's going to question you because you have to know if they go ask this person's going to be like, I didn't do that examination.
oh yeah. The level of arrogance is amazing here. I'm smarter than them. I know what I'm doing. Nobody's going to question me, and just thinking you can just do whatever you want and get away with it. And so far, they have.
It says the victim's family consultant contacted Dr. Galeno, which was again the medical director, and requested to interview Dr. Osborne, which is the ME that did the autopsy. At first,
Oh
Dr.
yeah.
Galeno said no, he would not permit any such interview. But,
Well, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't either.
right? Yeah, I
If I
know.
was his boss, yeah, absolutely not. Yeah,
Yeah, because you're the one who did these coaching sessions and that he's been screwing up all kinds of stuff. So, yeah.
yeah.
However, they kept on, and after several attempts, Dr. Galeno stated he would permit Dr. Osborne to be interviewed via a conference call since Dr. Ross was involved because Dr. Ross was a medical professional, which to me, that makes it even more ridiculous that you would let him do the interview because now you got somebody who can call him on his BS when he does something wrong.
Do you think maybe he thought, like, because they were both medical professionals, that he would back him?
Maybe. I mean, that had to be the only thing I could think of
Like
because,
professional courtesy or something?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, for me, I would be thinking, like, if I knew that my stuff was BS, there's no way in hell if a family wanted a conference call that I'd be like, you know what, now that you got another therapist there, sure, I'll do it. Because in my head, I'm going to be thinking everything I say, this therapist is going to be like, well, that ain't right. Nope.
Yeah.
That's not right at all.
Yeah. No, I'd be like, you got a warrant?
Right?
it's, it's
Yeah.
not even something that needs a warrant. Like, no, I would not. I wouldn't talk and I wouldn't let somebody else talk.
No.
That's, hmm.
But they did. So they had the conference call with Dr. Osborne, and that took place in the Dauphin County Coroner's Office. Present were the family consultant, Dr. Ross, and the Dauphin County Coroner. After responding to Dr. Ross's and the consultant's questions, Dr. Osborne was finally asked by the consultant why he changed the cause and manner of death from homicide to suicide. Dr. Osborne responded he made the change, quote, at the insistence of the police because the police said there was a lack of defense wounds, end quote. So basically, he didn't go by any of the evidential material that he gained from doing this autopsy. He just was like, you know what? The police said. That's not
Okay.
how it works.
So again, me true crime, you true crime. We're not on the same level. We've established that. But I thought the ME was the one who ruled cause of death.
They do.
Oh, okay.
They
All
do.
right. All right. All right.
They're,
I thought I knew that, but
I mean, they obviously they do cause of death. Manner of death, they do rule on manner of death. However, there are sometimes outside factors they're not aware of. And so an investigator will go in and tell them, kind of like circumstantial evidence, and it will lead them to be like, oh, okay, well, that's why it looks like that. Okay, yeah, this definitely was a homicide then. So,
okay, yeah.
yeah, I
But
mean,
but
detectives
lack
will
of
go.
defense.
I was just going to say, detectives will go back if they, feel like something maybe they didn't know and they'll tell them, but to make a decision based on what they're saying and to let the police decide manner of death is ridiculous.
Well, yeah. Also, when they're talking about it, lack of defensive wounds, it's like I'm pretty sure like the ME is the one that has the medical degree, and I understand that defensive wounds is not a medical degree, but like how do you just I, I just it's so confused. Not confused. It's ridiculous. Like
Okay,
you do your stuff, and then the police are like, "No, you're wrong. This is what it is." Oh, okay, sure.
exactly. So after the change of administration in the DA's office several years later, the consultant again contacted Dr. Galeno to request a meeting. The doctor informed the consultant that they needed to contact the DA, Mr. Larry Krasner, and have Mr. Krasner notify all interested parties of such a meeting and told them that he had the authority to demand the police be present. So Dr. Galeno went on to state he would be more than happy to host such a meeting and his secretary would make the arrangements. The consultant asked Dr. Galeno why the cause and manner of death was changed. Dr. Galeno stated, quote, you don't understand. The police said there was no one else with her in the apartment. I had to do something, end quote. I mean, to me, that says they were just all over them.
Sounds to me like it was a case they didn't want to investigate for some reason.
Well, and you know what's funny is in February of 2018, the person, the DA, Mr. Krasner, who they said, have him set the meeting up, he has the authority to do that. He
Mm-hmm.
recused himself from the case and sent the file to the Attorney General's office. Why?
Uh, Sounds like a CYA move.
I mean, right?
Like I don't want nothing to do with this. And like the medical examiner had to do something. Yeah, you had to do something. Like you had to stick by what you said. That's what you had to do, not change it because the police told you to. Like you have a responsibility. That's what you had to do. I
Right.
just I don't understand how.
And,
I mean, I do, but yeah, okay.
and get this. During the course of the review, an assistant ADA, an ADA, assistant DA, sorry, who was in the DA's office prior to Mr. Krasner assuming the position, was contacted by the consultant and asked to review the case file. The ADA stated he located the file in a closet away from the location of all homicide files. The case file was covered with Christmas decorations and did not have a homicide number assigned to it. So it was basically in a closet with the Christmas stuff. Are you kidding me? Right?
Okay,
Like you're just speechless. What do you say to
okay,
that?
Like, regardless of if this was or wasn't a homicide or this or that, or there shouldn't be any file just stuffed away with some fucking garland and lights.
Yeah. He went on to say one of the first things he noticed was the report regarding the spinal cord exam was not in the file. He contacted the ME's office to obtain a copy of the report, and the ME's office told him the report did not exist. I mean, what? It's so ridiculous. It says the ADA agreed with the consultant following his review that a basic death investigation was never performed by the police. That is ridiculous. But apparently, this was the person before Kastner, and then Kastner took over and was like, I think I'm just going to recuse myself. I'm not really going, I'm not going to do this.
I mean, do you blame him?
I mean, it's so ridiculous. I
I
cannot
mean,
even.
you come across something like that, and they want you to answer questions on it. No, 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 I'm not doing that.
It is just says the AG's office had the case for approximately 14 months. Witnesses interviewed by AG investigators remarked the investigators were totally unprofessional and it was evident they did not know what they were doing. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
I don't work for the AG's office, and yeah, I concur.
Right? Right? It's so ridiculous. So we had that analysis. So that was the death analysis that the PI did. So that is what he sent to the lawyer. And that's how the lawyer then wrote this letter back to them at the ME's office. So basically, because the thing is, they can't reopen her case until it says that the manner of death at least is undetermined. Because as long as it says suicide, they can't reopen it
Yeah,
because it's a closed case. So what they have been trying to do is to get the ME to change it. And it's been an uphill battle, but that's the whole point of them sending this letter to Dr. Galino is to say, hey, I'm not trying to bully you guys, but clearly some mistakes were made. Like, we need to reevaluate this stuff.
absolutely.
I mean, yeah, right? And like I said, they included the reports from all of the people who had worked on the case. It says Guy DeAndrea, I hope I'm saying that right. I believe I am. A former Philadelphia homicide prosecutor who reviewed the entire case file before leaving the DA's office. Gregory McDonald, Chief Deputy Coroner for Montgomery County, and Robert D. Keppel, retired Chief Criminal Investigator for the Washington State AG's office, all determined the physical evidence raised serious questions that undermined a finding of suicide in Ellen's case, and in some cases warranted a determination of homicide. So, I mean, they're saying, hey, not everything says homicide. Some of it might be undetermined, but there's at least some of this stuff that's screaming homicide, and you still have suicide on this. What the hell?
Yeah. So if there's some that's that looks one way, and then there's stuff that looks homicide, you at least got to meet in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, again, the two knives was one of the things. A study of the wound pattern suggests not all could have been self inflicted, like we were talking about. And let's see, it says the cumulative effect of the wounds suggests that before the final stab was administered to Ellen's chest, she would have been rendered physically incapable of inflicting more wounds. She suffered a significant wound at the base of her skull that penetrated her brain by several centimeters. So, again, it has shown that this spinal cord injury would have rendered her completely incapacitated. And we know that since the knife was still in her chest, that was the last wound made. So, how the hell did she
Hmm.
stab herself in the chest if she couldn't move?
Yeah, because I mean, if you just get a concussion, there's a lot of times you're completely out of it, and there's muscle, and there's all kinds of stuff that goes on with
Yeah.
that, and that's not even anything penetrating, your actual brain.
Exactly. I mean, when you're paralyzed, you can't just be like, you know what? I'll summon up the strength to do one more.
Yeah, yeah,
Like that
yeah.
doesn't work that
I got
way.
one. Yeah, I've done 19. I got one more in me.
Yeah.
Come on,
No.
it's ridiculous.
It says also this particular wound resulted from an upward strike to the base of the skull that would have been difficult, if not impossible, for an individual to inflict on herself. I mean, wow. Like, so
And
not
the thing,
so
yeah, and the thing about it is, it's like you can go through and have somebody try and do this. Like try and replicate the stab wounds that she has. To not to prove, not even from a my professional opinion or this or that, but watch somebody try and do it, and it'd be impossible. It's like, all right, so it's impossible. Yeah, there we go.
yeah, right. The third item is questions concerning the involvement of Dr. Lucy Rourke Adams. So remember the Emmys report they just kind of made up, or the
Yeah.
one so, that kind of was supposed to be justifying the finding of suicide. So when all those questions arose, the investigators reached out to Dr. Rourke Adams, and she tells them, I don't recall this. I don't recall ever looking at that. I don't recall ever, sending an invoice, which I know I would have done. So even if I just basically lost my memory and have amnesia, there'd still be an invoice in the file.
Yeah, and sure, some cases could, you know, kind of blend together and they wouldn't stick out. I feel like this one is one of those that, a hardened homicide detective or whoever's been doing this for years. This is one that you remember.
Right. It is so ridiculous.
Yeah. I don't feel like you got to go back and look in your records to see if you did this or not. Like this is one that would stand out. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I feel like it is.
She also went on to say that she had no recollection of consulting with the police department or the ME's office on that date, and there is no corroborating record of her being picked up and brought to the ME's office, as the report suggests. So they went so far as to say they went and picked her up and brought her back to do this examination. And she's like, nope, I remember somebody coming to pick me up.
So they're medical examiners and Uber drivers. Okay.
And flat out liars. I mean,
Wow. That is.
wow.
And here's the thing. This is also what doesn't make any sense is if you're going to lie about something, at least make it something that, you and somebody else that you're in on it with can corroborate one another.
Hmm.
Don't lie with a third party that is going to be like, "No, that didn't happen."
Yeah,
I mean, they're not even smart enough to lie about the stuff that they can control.
that's what I'm saying. The audacity to think that nobody would ever reach out to this person, like, you know what, we're just going to put this in the file and they'll believe us because we know what we're doing.
Yeah, it's like just because your investigation was a shit show doesn't mean the investigation that other people do is going to be.
Right? So,
Jeez.
the fourth item, blood pattern evidence, suggests Ellen's body was moved or repositioned. To me, that is huge as well. So it says, upon
Yeah.
review of the crime scene photographs and other evidence, the independent experts have concluded that Ellen was lying down and later moved into the sitting position in which she was discovered by investigators. For example, clear from the photographs of the scene is a trail of blood running horizontally, parallel to the floor, along the side of Ellen's face, which Detective Scott Illman concluded defies the laws of gravity and suggests Ellen was moved from the original position she had been in when the blood dried.
Hmm. Yeah, and last time I checked, dead people don't move.
Right? And this is why you do a crime scene reconstruction.
Yeah.
Gosh. Let's see. Found other evidence consistent with her being moved or repositioned post-mortem, concluding that she had been in a position different from that in which she was found at the time the blood was deposited on her sweatpants, sweatshirt, and shoes. He further concluded that Ellen's head had been in several positions during the time of blood flow, and for long enough as to have the blood flow across her face and back toward her ear, upward towards her eyes rather, and also downward toward her chin in a manner that is inconsistent with the position she was found in. I mean, yeah, like blood's not just gonna, unless you got a fan blowing, it's not just gonna be whipping all over your face. I mean, gravity. Like, I may not be a blood expert, but I know gravity. We learned that in school.
Yeah. Yeah. Gravity's a real thing,
Yeah, gravity's a thing.
and it's consistent. It makes stuff move the same way regardless of what it is.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
So the fifth
Okay.
item is the knife block, and they say that it suggests altercation, which, we talked about as well. Basically just says that the condition of the crime scene raised questions for the experts that would support a finding of homicide rather than suicide. And one of those was the knife block. They were talking about how heavy it was and that, it's not something that would just been easily knocked over. So it had to have been, knocked over with sufficient force to have not only pulled it over, but have knocked two of those knives across the counter and into the sink.
Yeah, yeah, and even if there wasn't a struggle necessarily, and you know they both knocked it over, if you're pissed off and you're going to stab somebody and you're going after him, you grab a knife and as you're pulling it out, you're also causing the knife block to fall over at the same time. So I mean, there's no, like, I don't see anybody who is going to commit suicide by stabbing themselves yank a knife out of the knife block so hard that it falls over.
Exactly, exactly. And then the sixth item under this category states Ellen's behavior that day is not consistent with suicide. Events leading up to Ellen's death are also inconsistent with suicide. After leaving work early that day due to the snowstorm, she filled her car's empty gas tank. Also, she was halfway through preparing a fruit salad, which was left unfinished on the counter as seen in the photographs. In addition, her treating psychiatrist, Ellen Berman, is firm Ellen was not suicidal. Finally, all the wounds to her chest and abdomen were inflicted through her clothing, which, as the investigators concluded, is highly unusual in cases of suicide. In nearly all documented cases, an individual will lift his or her clothing and stab directly into the skin. So, I will say this as a therapist. People think that if somebody plans for the future, there's no way they could have died by suicide. That is incorrect. I will say, there are some people that will go through their normal daily activities. I mean, you know, I know of people that have gotten up, ate breakfast, took their morning walk, drank their morning coffee, sat outside and read their morning paper, and then died by suicide. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that the preponderance of the evidence here is pretty self explanatory. I mean, I think this, in addition
Yeah.
to everything else, and also if I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. Okay, so the reason a lot of times people will carry out those normal activities is because once they have decided they want to end their life, they feel a sense of peace because they've gotten to the point of suicide because they're in so much pain. And so they make that decision and they're at peace because they're like, well, this pain's going to have an ending. And
Mm-hmm.
so they will go through those normal rituals and be like, you know what, I'm going to get all my stuff done and then I'm going to do it. But it's not like it's so quick that if they're in the middle of making a fruit salad, they're like, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm done with this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't have the same ring to it to me.
Not at all.
Okay, so the next section under that is it says facts cited in support of suicide finding or are inconclusive, require further investigation. So their first item under that is talking about the door being locked from the inside. Their whole theory is that since this bar was engaged, that she had to have been in there by herself because there's absolutely no other way.
Yeah. Yeah. No other way at all.
Yeah. But it states in here that, when indeed this factor was so critical in the minds of the original investigators, the remainder of the investigation seemed an exercise in uncovering explanations, no matter how unlikely, to justify their initial prejudgment, because they didn't care about, actually doing any kind of test. So instead of checking it, they just accepted that and they said it was never properly tested. I mean, wouldn't that be like day one kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's almost like those the whole small town cops have an idea of who did something, so they get the evidence to prove that it's that person rather than following the evidence. It's almost like they just ignored everything that went against what they thought it should be and didn't even bother to look into things that might possibly disprove their theory of suicide.
Right. It says, as noted in the expert reports and visible in the photographs of the apartment, the safety bar remained intact and undamaged, and although disengaged, was still attached, albeit loosely, to the door and door frame, respectively. Had the door been forced open from the outside without first disengaging the safety bar, as the investigators concluded, at least one of its ends would necessarily have been ripped from its screws in either the door or the door frame.
You know, you say that, and then I don't like you gave me the picture that I put up on the website that shows the door latch, and it didn't even register with me that there was like there's no damage to it.
Right. Yeah.
Like I even put the picture on our website, and I still didn't even realize that there was zero damage. There's no indication that there was forced entry with that at all.
Yeah. Let's see. Because I don't know why. Originally, I was just thinking like this was a picture as like an example, but on here it says crime scene photos.
Yeah, I mean it's the actual door, and I mean there's nothing there showing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like if you look at on the side with the on the door, it's like pulled up just a little bit, and there's a little bit of like paint and stuff, but that is it. I don't
Yeah,
know how it wouldn't have pulled the door thing out.
I mean there would at least been damage, not just a few flakes of paint off of
Yeah.
the door. There would have been a whole lot more to it. Like it would have come off. I mean, because like we talked about in the first episode, like those things are not designed to keep anyone out.
Yeah,
So
exactly. It said that they did tests performed by one investigator using an identical mechanism repeatedly confirmed that. What they were saying about how it would have had at least one of its ends been ripped from the screws.
yeah, and that's just another thing that's easy to test and disprove.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It says, contrariwise, the damaged but functional safety bar depicted in the photograph was consistent with the application of force to the door, but not entry, as if the door had been pulled from the inside, causing the damage seen in the photographs and then manually disengaged.
Ooh.
Yeah, so this
But
isn't even saying like anybody was outside this door using like a magnet or any of that stuff. Like they're straight up saying like, well, like somebody caused the damage after they came in.
so it's like somebody breaking a window to try and show that somebody came in through a window, but forgetting which side of the window to break.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, if you take the time to stage everything or attempt to stage, like, you had to break it, why wouldn't you just leave that latch closed and then bust it down from the outside? I guess because, you know what I mean? Like, leave it there. That way it's still latched. You kick the door in and the damage would be, you know, it would be like you forced from the outside. Why wouldn't you just do that? He kicked down the door anyway.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Unless maybe he thought he might not be able to kick the door in, or was thinking he didn't want to take the chance of anybody seeing him outside the apartment setting it up. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe he got it all ready before leaving to go do that whole, like 90-second workout.
It's definitely very suspect.
So it says, although a forced entry was reported by her fiance, who told police investigators that upon finding the safety bar engaged and her not responding to his messages, he kicked the door open in the presence of a member of the building's security. The member of security staff allegedly present when the fiance kicked the door is firm that he was not present as alleged. And he signed an affidavit stating that.
Oh, the security dude.
Yeah. He's like,
So,
nope, wasn't there.
and here's my thing though, like if you were not responding to texts, I wouldn't get worried because that's what you do. Um, but but if you weren't answering your phone and I couldn't get a hold of you at all, I I wouldn't wait for somebody to come
Hmm.
up there.
Yeah.
Like I would just kick the door in.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're
So
concerned, why do you have to get somebody to go with you?
yeah, so getting somebody is, just obviously it's just trying to, firm up his alibi. But again, you lie about something that can be proven or disproven. Like,
Well, I
like,
don't know. It almost went exactly as planned.
well, that is true.
I mean,
Yeah.
So the guy's affidavit says, I worked the afternoon and evening shift at the Venice Lofts on January 26, 2011, and was on duty when Ellen Greenberg was found dead in the sixth floor apartment number 603. I was the only desk clerk security person working on the premises during the afternoon and evening. Before I learned she was dead, her fiance had come to the concierge desk where I was stationed on the first floor of the building. He asked if I could help him get into his apartment, and I told him I could not. I did not accompany or escort Mr. Goldberg up the elevator, stairs, or otherwise at any time on January 6th. Had he been accompanied or escorted, it would have been by me. I have reviewed the videotapes taken from the facility, which record activity in the first floor elevator lobby and other common areas of the facility from about 3 until 7. The video confirms that neither I nor anyone else accompanied him to his apartment at any time during the full length of the video. If I had accompanied or escorted him to his apartment, I would have done it using the elevator and it would be captured on the video. I mean, he just goes on. It's like he's trying to find every single way he can say wasn't there, didn't happen.
Okay. Okay.
Now that was really stupid to lie about because I mean, all they had to do
Yeah.
was ask the guy.
Yeah.
Like, why would you
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like all the stuff that is disproven is easily disproven.
Yeah,
Like it's like you didn't even go through the work of trying to come up with a real lie that was gonna, that would withstand any kind of interrogation or questioning. I mean, not even an interrogation, just a simple, "Hey, were you there?" Nope. Oh well, shit. Okay.
it's
Like
like
that simple.
it's almost like either that or the arrogance of like they won't question me. I'll just tell them he was there with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
It's ridiculous.
and I'm not gonna say it was him, but I will say that, you know, people that are rich tend to have an arrogance about them that, because I'm rich, people won't question me. That's just a blanket statement on, wealthy people who tend to act like that.
Yeah. So the second item under this is lack of defensive wounds. It says another of the factors cited in support of the finding of suicide was the lack of defensive wounds on her hands and arms, which could be expected on the victim of a knife attack of this nature. However, as Dr. Ross explained in his report, the stab wound inflicted upward at the base of her skull to her spine and brain would have been incapacitating and made further resistance impossible. Moreover, Dr. Ross did find evidence of fresh bruises and a fingernail imprint on Ellen's neck, suggesting she may have been physically overwhelmed and rendered defenseless by her attacker at the outset of the altercation, further explaining the lack of defensive wounds customary in knife attacks. Moreover, a lack of defensive wounds is not unheard of in these instances, particularly when the victim is attacked quickly so as not to be able to defend herself, the proverbial blitz attack. And I remember reading in one of those other reports it talking about ligature wounds.
Yeah, which had they done anything, they would have swapped for DNA.
Yeah.
Like, I know I usually say more, but I don't know. I don't know what to say
Yeah,
with
what do
this.
you say to it? I mean,
It is so obvious that it is not suicide.
mhm. I mean,
Like,
that's the thing. It's
I
like,
mean,
what?
like,
That's what I don't get. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I think that a lot of people just assume that, well, if the police said it, it's true. Like, I can't tell you how many people have said, well, if the grand jury indicted them, of course they're guilty. I'm like, no. Well, then why don't we just use the grand jury indictment as conviction?
yeah. It's like, do you not understand how grand juries work?
Yeah, it's
Like,
like
there's
it's
no,
super easy to get.
yeah,
And
there's no defense, and there is no need for a unanimous verdict. So, grand jury just seeing if there's enough to maybe have a trial. Pretty much is
right?
what it is. So it's like, come on.
Ugh,
Eh, I don't know. I don't know. And I don't know. I just don't know what to say. I mean, it's obvious it's not suicide. Um, and a lot of the evidence that they would need is probably gone.
yeah, that's the scary thing.
Hmm.
The third item is her mental state. So they talked about her getting treatment for her anxiety. And again, that, she had not exhibited any predisposition towards self harm or that she entertained any suicidal ideation. Dr. Berman maintains Ellen did not exhibit any indications of suicidal ideation while under her professional care. And I mean, she was prescribed medications for the anxiety.
Yeah, and she took her off of the other medication, right?
Yeah.
So there's not even a chance of a medication that caused a side effect that would lead to suicide.
Yeah, I mean, she's just straight Klonopin and
Yeah,
Ambien. I mean, like,
yeah. So I mean that, yeah. So there's not even a adverse side effect,
and
reason.
yeah, because any of the time, I mean, I know people have talked about people doing crazy stuff when they're on Ambien, but that's like at night when they take it and go to bed and they get up in the middle of the night and don't realize they're up and they do crazy stuff. She wasn't, she didn't take an Ambien and then go to the kitchen and start making a fruit salad.
Hey, I know all about that because I mean, when
Yep.
I was taking Ambien, I remember I had to like give you my phone when I went to bed because I would text you crazy stuff, and I was so
Yes.
worried that I was going to text like my commanding officer
Oh my
some
gosh.
craziness. I mean, I told you gummy bears were a form of currency.
You
when
said they
when
needed to be the new form of currency because marshmallows had their chance and they messed it up. It was the
yeah,
most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
yeah, yeah, that's why you shouldn't Ambien in text. So I mean, but I never was like, hey, I'm gonna try and stab myself 20 times.
Yeah.
That. Hmm.
And she didn't do it while in the middle of the night. I mean, so it's
Yeah,
not like she
yeah.
took the Ambien and was like, "You know what? I'm gonna go sleep in the kitchen while I cut this stuff."
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah, yeah. I mean,
God.
people do normal, people can do things while they're on Ambien, but normal stuff,
Yeah.
everyday stuff. Hey, suicide. Woo, let's do it. No, no, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. It talks about the Attorney General's office investigation being fraught with many problems. The OAG investigators conducted a forensic analysis of Ellen's laptop and found in her internet search history evidence of an interest in painless death. They concluded this was consistent with a finding of suicide, but made no determination whether this was consistent with a finding that Ellen committed suicide. Further, they nowhere address known chain of custody concerns pertaining to her laptop and cell phone, or how these concerns may have impacted information now stored on those devices. I mean,
Yep. Like I
um,
was saying earlier, the chain of custody, that's the concern too. Is anything that may be used as evidence, there's chain of custody concerns.
and I love the last sentence. It says, finally, leaving aside questions related to the chain of evidence and reliability of these findings, the Office of the Attorney General was unable to explain how an individual interested in painless death would have reached the unlikely conclusion after allegedly conducting research on the subject that a preferred means of suicide was to stab oneself 20 times front and back. I was like, "Oh, that's good."
Yeah, that is a very polite way of telling somebody they're absolutely incompetent and should
Mhm.
not be doing what they're doing. Yeah. I mean, but
Yeah.
it's all true. I mean, it's 100% true.
Yeah. And there's a whole conclusion, but basically he just closes it with saying that the case needs a closer examination and a more thorough investigation, but that can only be accomplished by changing the cause of death because it has to be inconclusive or homicide for them to continue to do anything. So in October 2019, the attorney filed a civil lawsuit on their behalf, the family's behalf, against both the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office and the pathologist who conducted the autopsy to get officials to change her manner of death from suicide to undetermined or back to homicide. So that was October of 19. In
Hmm.
January of 2020, the judge ruled the case could go ahead. Because at first they were like, well, we don't even know if this is something that you can. They didn't originally. They were like, I don't even know if this is something that can be heard in court. Like, can a judge say that they have to do that?
Well, I feel like if the police department can tell a medical examiner what the cause of manner of death is, then shouldn't a judge be able to do the same?
Right, right. It's ridiculous. So then in December of 2021, the AG's office released a statement saying they are reviewing all information sent from the family's attorney. And at this point, that's pretty much it. I mean, I guess
No,
they're still
no, no,
reviewing stuff.
no, no. Look, I agreed that we would change the subject matter of this podcast for the sake of the audience because people love these type of cases. But you cannot tell me the story and then leave me here.
Well, I'm sorry. I mean, like I said, and I think we talked about this how they're playing like musical chairs with this case file though, because the the AG's office gets it, and then they're like, no, 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 you need to take it back, and then the DA's office is like, no, 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 we have to refer it out to somebody. So who even knows where this case is at now?
Well, we know where it's at. It's in the box with the Christmas ornaments.
Right?
I mean, this like how are we here in a city the size of Philadelphia? How are we here? This should not be a thing. This should be simple. I mean, and if anything else, like just changing it to something other than suicide, just to make sure that the investigation is done properly this time. Because there, I mean, like, look at so could the current medical examiner change
I don't
the
think
finding?
so. I think it has to be the one who did it.
So you're telling me, all right, so if somebody did an autopsy and said suicide
Hmm.
and then they died,
I
we
was
could
thinking
never
that as
change it?
well. I don't know. I don't know how. I don't know how it would work then.
I guess maybe go to the judge.
Yeah. And looking, it looks like it's been referred out to Chester County, the Chester County DA. I don't know anything about Pennsylvania though, so that tells me nothing.
Well, I think moving it to a different county is good
Yeah, absolutely.
because then you're going to have, you're not going to have anybody from the same administration, from the DA's office or medical examiner or anything else. You'll have hopefully an unbiased review. But then again, if it has to be the same medical examiner,
Yeah.
then what do we do now? I mean, I feel like this is terrible. I feel like somebody's getting away with murder.
Yeah.
There's no way this was suicide. I mean, and that's not me saying it. That's three people who are way more intelligent than I am saying this. The evidence says this. Like everything says this, except for some police officer who decided it wasn't homicide. Just no, it's suicide. That's what it is. That's what we're
Yeah.
going with. Okay, well.
Yeah.
So
I
are we
mean,
just gonna follow this and wait to see if something happens?
yeah, because well, I mean, I've followed it this far, so yeah. I mean,
That's fair. I mean, because I would love to see justice in this case. I am also very interested to see how they would get it. if they were to change it from suicide,
Yeah.
because what evidence do they have? And then for the evidence that they have, what can they actually use?
Yeah,
What
because
would
I
be
mean,
admissible?
everything that we've talked about, I mean, these are all the reports that they would probably use during a trial. And even though I think we all have a pretty good idea what we think happened, I don't know if it's enough that a jury would convict because,
Yeah,
I mean, I know I always go back to Casey Anthony, but for real, like,
yeah.
they didn't put her ass in prison. It's so easy to be found not
Well,
guilty.
yeah, and it's like they say, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And I mean, the only this if they were to change it to homicide, this would just be an unsolved homicide.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't think there's any evidence that there's nothing they can use to find out who did it, or should I say, prove who did it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Looking, I found something else that says in August of this year, the Chester County DA's office announced it had assigned an investigator and prosecutor to take a new look at the case.
Okay.
But
So
again,
the prosecutor is going to look at the case, and then the prosecutor is going to look at the evidence that he or she has to work with to determine if it's a viable case that they can take to trial.
evidently.
And the answer is going to be no.
You know what,
I
too,
mean, I
though? This is crazy. So I haven't seen this in anything else that I've read, but on this, uh, looking at what I'm looking at, that I found the August 22nd date. One of the thing that they talk about as an inconsistency is said it says that Ellen was left-handed, but the knife was apparently placed in her right hand. I've never heard that, but
yeah, come on.
I mean,
If that's like if
if
that's the
that's the
case,
case, my gosh, I
Lord.
can't even wow. You know what I don't get to is the whole the whole 911 call to me says a lot because again, how are you doing compressions and CPR on someone who's laying against a cabinet?
Yeah,
They
yeah,
have to be
yeah.
flat on their back. And
Hmm.
apparently, he at no time actually laid her flat on her back. He said he was doing those compressions, but she's still
Yeah, but then
leaning
he
up
also
against the
said,
cabinet.
that he saw the knife once he got closer to her, and then 911 told him not to do it, or not. It said
But
you
I,
wouldn't be able to do it, right?
yeah, but didn't I could have swore that they asked and they were like, lay her down on her back. And he's like, okay. And then that's when they said, I can go back and look at it and see.
Yeah, no, no, no. You don't have to. You're right. You're right.
But here's the other thing too. So she has like a zip up hoodie thing on. Now,
Hmm.
it was stabbed through all of her clothing. How did you not see it? I mean, if it was zipped up, it's not like there was even a part of it that could have been laying over the knife. It was zipped completely up. So the front of it would be pretty much flat. How
Yeah.
did you not see that knife? How is that even possible? I don't
You
understand how
know,
that's even possible.
what I also wonder too. Like, I mean, it's obviously not, and it's just another. It's just another indication that this is not what it has been ruled that it is. But I wonder how much blood was around the knife wound, because I mean, was she already dead, and you know her
Yeah.
heart was no longer beating, so when the final stab wound, and the knife was left there, did it bleed a lot, or did it not bleed at all because her heart
Yeah.
wasn't pumping anymore?
Yeah. This is a good question. And I have no idea.
And we'll never know
Yeah.
because
Right.
they didn't take
I
pictures.
mean,
So I mean, that's another thing that it would it'd be very interesting to know, but we won't.
it just, wow. It makes no sense why this stuff wouldn't have been done.
Yeah. Well, I really I feel horrible for her family. I mean,
Absolutely.
because I mean, it's tough enough for families when somebody does end their life through suicide, but to know it's not, and then to know that,
Yeah.
you know, because I mean, I would assume that her family is relatively smart, or somebody has basically told them, look, we might be able to get it changed, but don't hold your breath on convicting anyone.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just, oh God, just
Well,
so terrible.
I have a feeling that we know who they think did it.
Well, yeah, yeah,
And if I'm her parent, even if I know that they probably can never prove it, I'm going to make that person's life as miserable as I can for as long as I can. And if that means I have to drag them into court every chance I get, that's exactly what I'm going to do.
well, and that's, yeah, that I was just thinking, if you sue them and it's a civil trial, then the
Burden of
burden of
proof.
proof, yeah, the burden of proof is not as stringent as it would be on a jury trial.
Yeah.
So I mean, so if you couldn't get justice by convicting somebody, you would get a little bit of satisfaction by attempting to bankrupt them.
Yeah. And at least some of the people who have been convinced it was a suicide would probably be swayed, even though it's just a civil trial, by hearing that they found him guilty.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people get swayed with social media. So
Oh
yeah,
my
I mean,
gosh.
a civil trial would definitely sway a lot of people the other way. So, but I mean, I don't even know what they would use for that either.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I mean,
don't.
I guess the lies of saying this person did a report and this person was with them, and other
Yeah,
things,
I
but
mean everything they've shown in these reports is circumstantial evidence. I just don't know how it's like they say, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And although we feel like we know who did it, how do you prove
hmm
it? How do you prove it
yeah,
was that person? Like,
yeah.
even if you get it changed to murder, how do you prove it who murdered her?
Yeah, because there's no evidence
Yeah.
that can either be used, and there's no evidence that wasn't. And there's evidence that wasn't collected.
Yeah, because I feel like somebody could easily say that they, while he was working out, someone else came in and killed her and staged
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. All you need to do is give a jury a little bit of doubt. That's all it
Yeah.
would take. Yeah, and people typically don't convict if they aren't, if they don't see some CSI sitcom, or not sitcom, but CSI drama, crime drama stuff going on.
Yeah.
And if it's all circumstantial, people are usually pretty hesitant to put somebody in prison
People do
if it's just
not
circumstantial.
get what beyond a reasonable doubt means. I mean, beyond a reasonable doubt means that you can have reasonable doubt. Not every question is going to be answered,
Yeah.
but people see it as, well, if there's not DNA and a photograph of them stabbing her, then I cannot convict. That's
Right.
just
Yeah.
not. I mean, we need
We,
video.
yeah. Yeah. I was going to say that we need to see it on video before I'll believe it. So,
Yeah,
well, this is definitely a frustrating story. Um,
it absolutely is. And sorry that I just noticed the August thing. I've wrote this up so long ago. I thought I had checked for enough updates and seen that, but I had not seen that they were assigning an investigator to her. That's my bad. But we know.
well, I mean, we'll continue to cover it, and
Yep,
if anything breaks, we'll be sure to bring it to everybody.
that we will.
All right. Is that everything you have for me on this one?
That is everything I have on this one.
I would say thank you, but I
Yeah.
don't feel like it's warranted. But hopefully hopefully there's something out there. Hopefully they change the manner of death, and there can be an investigation that's done on this, and hopefully she can get some justice. Well, that is it for tonight. Hey, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Crime on Record, and also go ahead and go to cotrpod.com, where you'll find everything else about our this podcast, the other one we do, and then also our YouTube channel that we have, where we are covering a lot of current cases.
Yeah.
And be sure to subscribe to this podcast too. Thanks, guys, for listening. We'll be back soon.
Bye.